Hi, it's Jeff Chalmers here from discoverdouble-bass.com, which is the home of online learning for double bass players with our lessons, our courses, our interviews. We're there to help you on your journey. So if you're back, fantastic to have you with us. If you're new, welcome. We really hope that you enjoy what we have today. And we have a very special artist, somebody who is a renowned jazz bass player with a really unique approach to his music. As a composer and as a band leader, he's prolific. He's released 15 albums, I think we just counted up, as well as numerous as a sound man. And if I had to sum up the essence of his music, I think I would say that it's a Balkan-tinged jazz. So we'll come back to that later, but for now it gives me enormous pleasure to welcome to Discover Double Bass. It's Nenad Veselic. Welcome, Nenad. It's great to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming to Leeds and sharing your music with us. Perhaps you could just set the scene by letting us know a little bit about who you are and where you're living and what your life looks like right now.
Well, I was born in Yugoslavia, in Serbia, 75, last century, and I moved to Graz at the age of 1995 was there. And started to study in Graz on Jazz Academy, which was one of the coolest one back then. That's how I started. Basically, I moved to Graz, to Austria, stayed there for a couple of years. Then I was running around, playing everywhere, trying to move to Paris, was there. And then eventually I moved to Vienna, where I'm still living. So basically I'm almost 30 years in Austria already.
Wow.
Soon, 29.
So you're Serbian background, but you're living in Vienna.
Right.
And you also teach in Berlin, I believe.
Yes, for the last 4 or 5 years I'm head of the bass department at Jazz Institute Berlin, teaching bass and also running ensembles, taking care of that all the string instruments are fine over there, and spending a lot of time with young bass players from Berlin.
Oh, that's fantastic. But you've obviously been, as I said in the introduction, prolific. Your career has been based around putting out your own music, is that right?
Well, as any bass player, I started playing like every day, doing sideman gigs, whatever would come.
Yeah.
I already started pretty early in Serbia. I think I professionally started to play really 7 days a week when I was 16.
Wow.
And getting paid for it. And I was very lucky to have a great teacher in Niš, Milovan Dimić, who taught me the first classical thing on bass. He got me involved with Symphonic Orchestra of Niš, so I was really with 17 or 18, I was in a band, in orchestra, reading Tchaikovsky, doing stuff, playing Bach, so I had this really serious classical education on the double bass. But longer before that, I actually started playing piano when I was 5, and I was doing piano for 10 years. It's actually my first instrument. I don't perform with that, but I'm using it every day. And in the age of 12, I started to play electric bass.
That's right.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Deep Purple, Roger Glover. That's how I started. I heard the intro line from Smoke on the Water, probably the bass hook for a lot of bass players, around the world. So I started with 12 with the electric bass, and then I think when I was 15 or 16, I saw the first double bass, and that was love at the first sight. I really fell in love with the instrument and
Do you remember playing it for the first time?
Totally. I was in a place and the people played some folk music, so I asked if I could try it, and it was amazing experience, I totally went for it and talked to my teacher. He helped me get the bass. It was in, a Czech bass. Not a wooden one, pretty cheap one, but I could afford it, and I was really happy, to be able to own the double bass and to start playing on it.
That's amazing. Well, there's so much to unpack here, but in the introduction, I referenced this Balkan sound to your jazz, and Perhaps you could speak, and maybe we could hear a little bit about what that is. What's the maybe is some of the essence of your music
Right,
now?
yeah, right. Well, when I started playing music, I wasn't really interested in playing anything folk or anything Balkan. You know, I wanted to sound like my heroes, like John Petitucci with Chick Corea or Jaco Pastorius, you know. Mark King, you know, I was playing a lot of slap bass, you know. He was really a hero then, like when I was 16, 17, Lessons in Love and everything. I mean, I had to play that. So that's how I started. But I was lucky enough to get a job, to get a gig with the local guys, really good folk players. And I was the youngest guy in the band. They accepted me because I was playing acoustic bass. They were searching for a young guy playing acoustic bass and being interested in playing folk music.
So this is traditional Serbian music?
That's a traditional Balkan music, not only Serbian.
Okay.
We played songs from Romania, from Bosnia, from Greece, from Bulgaria, and so on. Macedonia also. So that's this whole area. So I just always say that when I talk about my music, it's like it's not only about the Serbian music, and the Serbian music itself, it's pretty different every 200 kilometers, you know. It's changing, like where I'm coming from, it's always old rhythm, like 7/8. That would be like, you know, the root pattern of the folk music. And everything else is more 2/4, 4/4, like, you know, you know, things like that. I didn't really like it that I was doing that, you know. I always wanted to do more rock gigs and funk gigs, jazz gigs with the Cats and everything. But I played like almost every day, like sometimes during the day and sometimes in the evening, learning all these ancient songs, you know. Some of them were not so old, but really cool ones. And by the age of 17, 18, I knew, like, besides the standards and the funk stuff and the classical stuff that I was playing, I was able to play like probably 500-600 folk songs, you know, by year. And that was a huge combat school for me, actually, to be honest. And that helped me later on in my career, when I decided to start exploring, really. When I was 16, 17, I was not really, you know, appreciating this kind of knowledge. But I'm really grateful that I went this path, you know, and that I learned all this beautiful music, all these different rhythms, old rhythms, and so on and so on.
And how has it come together in your music today then? Maybe we could hear a little something?
Of course, yeah, I'm doing a lot of that stuff today. When I moved to Graz, I was like, you know, trying to sound like Paul Chambers, like Ray Brown, like Sam Jones, my first heroes, you know, walk like a Ray Brown, you know. Things like that. That was my thing. I was playing acoustically, you know, with strings like this, high action, you know, playing every day. I also played on the streets for years in Graz. That was a hip thing to do, and you could also make a little bit of money, you know, for starting. But then at one point I realized that actually I can do more for the bass society or for the music community overall. I can do much more if I try to dig into my heritage, try to understand first who I am as a person, you know, and then also musically. And then that's the place, that's the point of my career where I really started digging deep into the Balkan music and trying to make it work with the jazz standards, mixing jazz language with Balkan language and finding out what that is, you know. And then basically, well, I can show you on bass, that would be like typically you can go from really beautiful melodies like a lot of ornamentic. So on. like really beautiful stuff with all these little notes, dead notes, pull-offs, pull-outs that you have to do to make this work. Basically, I was transcribing a lot of singers, trying to sound like them, like. And so on. So you have all these beautiful rubato songs, but then you also have songs like 7/8, for example, is a typical South Serbian Macedonian thing. Is like. It's 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Beautiful. That
really
harmonic
nice
minor, the beautiful,
Right,
the rhythms, the 7/8 rhythms, and these ornaments are all giving you this very unique kind of approach.
Right, right. That's the main thing. But also trying to improvise over these kind of grooves, that was really hard for me, because you have like 7/8.
Yeah.
Let's play just simple. Let's go from the groove. It's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then we go into something complicated. We come back. Try to stay smooth, you know, and then improvise. So basically staying in the 7th thing for the whole time, you know, trying not to lose the beat. Everything that you would try to do like in a you know, like high level jazz band. Try not to lose the beat, try to really not be too busy, to develop a language that makes sense. Not to put the title like, oh, look at me, I'm playing gold rhythm. But really, you know, to push the music in the first place. And use the knowledge that you gain from the playing jazz standards, you know, listening to the cats from New York, but also bringing your heritage and explaining people who you are, where you're coming from, what's this music all about, you know, and showing them some really, really, really nice songs.
Well, you absolutely are doing that. I mean, so if you're, as a teacher, you must have people like me who don't have the same background and are less familiar with 7/8. Is it just a case of getting familiar and building a relationship with it? Have you got any advice for somebody like me?
There is a whole system when somebody wants to try that. But when I'm teaching, I'm not trying to put this Balkan jazz thing right away in front of somebody, you know, in front of student. But I first try to persuade him to check out Ray Brown, to check out Paul Chambers, to check out Sam Jones, to check out Charlie Hayden, who's my like you know, my darling. I really like checking out John Petitucci from the Younger Cats or Christian McBride. We just talked about it yesterday. I mean, these amazing cats, and then going back or going there into the old rhythm thing, you know, or Balkan thing, folks music thing. Actually, what I try to do with the kids, with students, they're not kids anymore. I try to make them play their own folks music. I don't try to make them play my folks music, you know? So I try them to think about it, who they are, you know, what they wanted to do and everything. But of course, if somebody comes to me and asks about 7/8, 9/8, 11/8, or all these scales, then we will talk about it for a couple of weeks or a couple of months in order to explain what I'm really trying to do there. We have this aspect of rhythm, we have this aspect of playing melodies, ornamentic, and we have this harmonical thing.
So much going on there. I mean, in terms of something like when you're playing in Seven and describing it to students, are you often breaking it up in different ways? Like there you were going 3-2-2,
right?
Or would you sometimes go 4-3? Or,
yes, I do both.
Do you think in a kind of in a bigger pulse the way? Because I lose the beat when you're
that's
because I want to go back to feeling it in 4.
Well, you know, I try to do it really slowly with the metronome, and I try really to go like from there, like 1, 2, 3. If we have these two claves, like one is 3-4 and the other one is 4-3.
Yeah.
Basically, you just have to check them separately because they're not the same.
Yeah.
But then at the end, you can mix them, but also you have to be really careful if you're still serving the song. That's the most important thing, you know, to do. So basically, I will start with the metronome. We don't have a metronome right now, but let's mimic it like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Try to stay there.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
Right. So that's the first thing. We just try to stay on the beat and then try to break a beat, you know, and to go a little bit further. With improvisation, it's different, but I'm talking about comping now and the grooves. For the 4-3, it would be different, but we would have to like spend 10 minutes with each thing in order to really explain what's going on.
And you have this real clear sense of direction and way of articulating, both rhythmically and harmonically. And I was wondering, is much of that informed by your electric bass playing? Because you seem to have this it's very focused, and you're also a fine electric bass player as well. Today we're just talking about the upright, but has that fed into the journey?
Oh, totally, yeah.
Because learning those rhythms and the Mark King or whoever. And
well, the first thing I learned about the bass that it's a rhythmical instrument. So I often think about the bass as a drum set. Like if I would play, let's say 4 or 7, doesn't matter what we play. But if you just stamp your left hand and you don't do anything with your left, there's still something going on. For example, if we're playing this.
So there, for the camera, they may not realize that you're muting with your left hand and you're just playing with your right hand. And it's as a percussion instrument, very focused.
Exactly. So
could you give us a bit of that again?
Yeah. So what I'm trying to do with my right hand, we can explore that a little bit more, because I think the right hand is really the engine of the bass. That's how I hear it. And between many bass players, you can really distinguish the different approach just by watching them play differently in the right hands. I really try to mimic the drum set playing my right hand, and then I just choose the right notes in the left hand. If we do the same thing, like muting. you know. So I just tried, and I always talk to students about it, you know, about the right hand and all these different positions that I'm using, because we can elaborate about it a little bit more. That's really something I see it as really important for bass playing, and for me it's essential. It's my thing that I'm actually, that's making me play the way I do. So, but on the first place, I try to think of the bass as diatonic bass drum or a diatonic percussion instrument, you know. So I can do things like, you can get confused with all these things, you know. But that's how I try. So sometimes I will combine, you know, just playing the drums on the bass, like. You know, things like that. So I see it as a huge drum with ability to push out some notes.
Well, it's a really rich rhythmic world that you're living in, and we've looked at that briefly. Maybe you could talk a bit about the harmony. You know, I was mentioned that it's had a sort of minor sound, playing some kind of.
Well, people ask me a lot about it, you know, but the main approach is like you have to learn the song. So once you have the song right, you're just improvising the same way you would approach a jazz standard.
Okay.
You know, but just maybe in a different rhythm. It can be 4/4, of course. There is a lot of music on the Balkan in 4/4, but you have to develop a language in 7, which might be really hard, you know, like playing a phrase like. So you basically just take a jazz standard and play it in 7, and vice versa. You just take a Balkan song and play it like the same way you would do the jazz standard. So it's not like totally two different things that are happening, but there is a sound, certain sound, like in every music, like in every part of the world, there is. First of all, there is a sound that makes it different to everything else, the energy, the spirit. And I think if I would have to choose one scale, then it would be like this, they call it gypsy minor, or they call it like it's flat 9.
So it's like harmonic minor, but with flat 9.
And then you go. But what I tried to do is like mix that with a pentatonic scale, because then I get a new jazz sound, which is like. Things like that, because I always search for something that's more universal language than just the jazz or just the Balkan, you know, for me. And I came with this stuff basically playing just. We all know that, and we all know this. Or. But we don't know this.
So you've learned the blues scale that you were playing all over the bass, and you seem to have this real comfort with the instrument.
Oh yeah, well I think that was the first thing we should talk about. When I have a new guy, you know, like in a summer semester or winter semester, when we start, I mean the first thing is like, let's do the major scales, two octaves, all the keys. Let's do the minor scales, let's do the arpeggios, checking the things with the bow. Like you could go like any bass player in the world, you know, like if you don't know how to move the bass, if you don't know how to do that in all the keys, C sharp, if you're not there and your right hand is not right, and you don't have enough harmonic or rhythmical knowledge, then you're going to have a hard time learning songs and learning music and playing with the guys.
And you've put in a huge amount of time, because you've spoken about practicing and playing and performing on the streets, and that and I think this is one of the themes that seems to be coming up, the amount of energy that you need to put into this to be able to draw upon the facility, to develop the facility that you need to play the music that you want to play, whether it's rhythmical, whether it's the music that of your heritage, whether it's jazz improvisation. It takes a long time to put all of these pieces together.
Of course, yeah, but it's love. It's not a job, That's something you would do even if you're not paid, So basically it's an inner thing, like something that's coming from you. I started doing music with 5, and I could not imagine my life without making music. But basically all these things that you're doing just helps you develop and be better. If you're lucky, you will never stop learning and checking things and double checking where you are, who you are, how good you can do things. How honest are you to yourself? I mean, can you really play everything you hear in your head, and how much can you hear?
Was singing a big part? I mean, you mentioned playing traditional music. I wondered if in your childhood you were doing a lot of that, because you seem to have an incredible connection with your instrument.
Well, yes, I'm singing all the time, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't want to sing in front of cameras, to be
honest. That's fine. I don't expect.
Yeah, but I'm totally sure that if you cannot sing what you're playing, then you're faking it, actually. So basically, you're not you should play what you hear, but you should work on what you hear. So, and if you can really play on the bass, then you should be able to sing everything like. So it's just natural, Somebody has a better voice, somebody doesn't. But I had a great classical teachers when I was a kid. And my high school, I also finished arranging for choral arrangement, theoretical things, with music besides my bass. So I had some amazing teachers when I was a kid, and they were teaching us, if your voice is not good enough to sing, then you just find a way to express yourself. So basically, I think it's really important to be connected. Also, when you're doing drums, like it's really important to be able to feel the drums on any instrument, to feel that rhythmical thing, not just waiting for the drummer to play that for you.
You have a trio which is soprano, saxophone and accordion.
Right.
And of course the rhythm isn't just happening from you, the percussion on the instrument. It's the first time, I think, that I've seen an accordionist drum on their instrument.
We worked really hard, developing things, rearranging songs. We were working a lot for 10 years, like with different drummers. Accordion player wasn't there. It was a standard quintet with piano. I had many different bands, but then we started developing this thing without a drummer, which was really hard on the beginning. I have to admit. For example, if you have a song like playing, our opener is a song I wrote. The name of the song is "Awakening," Buđenje, and it goes like. It's a 7 groove. And this is slow, and I'm doing this for like 6-7 minutes, and like sometimes it's like. And doing that for 7 minutes and you're not warm, It's hard, you know. It's hard. You don't have a drummer. You're the drummer. You're the bass player. You're everything, you know. And you have your phases through the songs, you know, where you're asking yourself about your childhood, you know, seeing ghosts, everything coming back and forth. But you have to stay there, and that's actually how I started developing my first solo-based thing.
So this is one of the things is that you've had a long career in music, and one of the interesting things is that your Art of Balkan Bass video, which was how many years ago was that now?
Oh, that's more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, more than 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and it's been viewed so many times. And it's
Oh,
one
yeah,
of the, I was thinking it was the first time I connected with your music, and I was like, what is this? And people, it's so.
Well,
yeah.
I still get every now and then people trying to really do it right, you know, and that's a traditional song. The name of the song is Branjanka, and this song you can find in every country in Balkan, but they just call it differently. And I just did a version of it on bass. I just wanted, actually I was writing arrangement for a quartet and playing it on bass. And I was trying to find the rhythm and like, what now? And so on.
And I bet people listening to that will have maybe not, before you started playing, maybe wouldn't have connected it. And then been, oh, it's that one. And it's the one that was on Bass the World, I believe.
Oh yeah, it's overall. It's featured on so many channels. You know, it was. I mean, I didn't expect that. It was just one bass song, you know, at that time, you know. But people reacted to that. I think mostly because this song is so beautiful. It's a really ancient song. It has everything inside, all the harmony. It's still repeating this.
Yeah, that scale.
But mixing it with the.
Yeah. It's an amazing combination. And one of the things I was hoping that we could touch on is, as someone who's released so many recordings, so few of them include the traditional American songbook. You know, it feels like you've taken the harmony and the approach, and
Right.
you've really focused very much on your own music. Was that a challenge? Because for most people, that would, particularly at the beginning of your career, I would have expected to find more, and I could only find Just Squeeze Me. That was the only
Yeah,
tune that I
yeah.
could find.
Oh, I have a lot of them, you know, I just didn't publish them. I started doing, in my really young age, I was doing rock stuff, heavy metal stuff, classical stuff, you know. I was just reproducing stuff that I liked. And then further on, when I was 19 or 20, you know, I was a more or less, let's say, accomplished electric bass player, you know, accomplished, who's accomplished, but like I could play a gig, you know. And I went to Graz, you know, and I knew like 100 standards. And then I realized, oh man, there is so many songs I have to learn. So I was there for years just checking Paul Chambers, checking guys like Chuck Israels, Bill Evans Trio, Chick Corea Trio, Oscar Peterson, you know, Red Garland, and so on, you know, having all the Blue Note records that I could find, Riverside records, Impulse records, and so on and so on. So I was really into jazz for like 10 years. But then, you know, from there, you just decide, okay, well, I want to go a step back, which is actually 5 steps ahead. And that's how I decided from the first CD on to not include any jazz standards, you know, because I thought, well, I'm not born in New York. I'm not that guy. You know, I adore jazz. I love jazz. You know, I consider myself a jazz musician, and I know a bunch of standards. I'm playing with everybody, you know, and everything is cool. But what's gonna make me different from another guy from New York? And I am different. I am different. We're all different. And somehow I just got this vision, man. Just push your music. Write music, arrange folk songs. Like, go there. Nobody went there. I mean, nobody. Not that many people went that path, you know, especially from Balkan. There's just like 5 or 6 guys.
And you've been inspired by all of these wonderful players that we've mentioned, but I wonder if you could speak about some of the people that you've met, because we happen to have discussed the great Niels Henning Ørsted Pedersen.
Right.
And hey, let's just start there.
Well, I was really fortunate enough to be in Graz by that time and to meet some really amazing bass players and musicians. People like Barry Harris, people like Clark Terry, Marsalis brothers, and so on and so on. I mean, the list is really long. Some of them were on the school doing workshops. The other guys were just playing and hanging with us afterwards. Guys like John Scofield, you know, and the Chick Corea band like Veckel and Petitucci. So it was amazing being there in the 90s. It was, things that you can never forget are like playing on Niels Henning's bass.
What was that experience like?
It's amazing, you know. You're just shaking, you know. There is a room with 200 students, and he's like, "Okay, who's gonna play something for me? Who wants to try my bass?" And everybody's like, you know, and you're like shaking, but like, "Okay, I'll do it." Then you go out and you start playing the bass, and you know, it's like.
Was it hard to play? Because you think about his virtuosic technique, and some people might assume that the string heights are very low. I don't know. I mean, how?
Well, the string action was pretty low, but not too low.
Not
you know,
crazy.
so it was totally playable bass, amazing sounding instrument with a lot of energy from Niels. So you could feel it kind of. And when you start playing the bass, I was playing in front of him. I still remember. I think I played a solo piece, Softly as in a Morning Sunrise, and it was quite an experience. And following him around a couple of times, basically what we were talking about is his sound. Now it's more or less not secret anymore, but then, it was more than 20 years ago, I saw he had little dots here. And I was wondering what that is, you know, and then I realized he has a magnetic pickup, like on electric bass, combining it with a Wilson pickup in a magic box that somebody made for him. And he would really sound on every amp the same as on the CD, like you would know, you know, from his solo albums or doing the thing with the Peterson or, you know, other people. So that was one beautiful experience. Or meeting Ray Brown, that's something I will never forget, you know, because I really met him when I was in a Ray Brown phase. So I was really like putting these little small phones by night, you know, and trying to catch his quarter note, like really, where is he, you know, like really trying to feel that on the top feeling that he has. And spending then in that thing like 2 or 3 or 5 years just checking his walking bass, which I still think is amazing, like most amazing walking bass out there. When I think soloist, I think more Paul Chambers, you know, or Sam Jones. But when I think walking bass, I always instantly think about Ray Brown. And he was celebrating his birthday. The party was done by Thomastic in Vienna. He was playing in Jazzland in Vienna, and somehow I got in. I think my teacher, Wayne Darling, gave us 2 tickets for that, and somehow we managed to come in because it was really limited to VIP. And we weren't VIP. We were just young students, you know, playing bass. And I remember him coming he was wearing a white suit,
oh, wow,
looking like $1 million. With 2 young chicks, you know, I have to say, smoking a cigar, you know. And I was just watching every step, you know, everything he did, and looked him, you know, warming up in a backstage on his bass, you know. It was a really amazing experience. And then I was really next to the stage. And the surprise for him was Ed Thigpen playing the drums. They haven't met for like 15 years, and they played forever together, like more than 15 years in Oscar Peterson Trio, of course. And he was a birthday surprise.
Wow.
And that was something else. I was looking the bass drum pedal from Ed Thigpen through the finger of Ray Brown on the destination like this. And I was in tears, you know. It was quite an experience. When talking to him briefly, I mean, you don't want to talk to him for too long. But, you know, many other players like Chuck Israels we mentioned a couple of guys, but you always forget Ron McClure and so on and so on. So
and Wayne Darling you studied with.
Yeah, right. So Bear Phillips also, and
Did you ever meet Charlie Hayden when he was alive?
Well, unfortunately not.
Oh, that's a sad thing, 'cause you
Unfortunately
mentioned your
not.
love for his music before.
Oh yeah, the Charlie Hayden was actually a bridge between jazz and Balkan music for me. Because when I heard what he did with Quartet West,
Yes.
and what he did with all these duets with Pat Metheny, for example, or Hank Jones, bringing his own songs, or Liberation Orchestra. So he was next step, you know. He was also doing standards. I like what he did with Lee Konitz, for example, Brad Meldo, all these duo recordings. I was really swallowing that. And first of all, his understanding of harmony and walking and playing the solos like Johann Sebastian Bach. That was the first thing that really hit me hard. And then this suddenly new repertoire, you know, new songs that he's doing, not playing Stella by Starlight or, you know, Have You Met Miss Jones, but really doing some serious music, like writing songs like he did. He really moved me, you know. Once I was done with hard bop, bebop guys, you know, and all the fusion guys and everything, he hit me hard. Really, I can remember that moment. And from that point on, you know, we're in love forever. And then I thought it could be really interesting to bring this kind of behavior on bass, because, you know, like Charlie Hayden plays like. One finger, one note, but exactly the note that's needed for that piece of music, which is like, if you get there, it's killing you, you know, how good it is. So I tried, you know, making that connection with Balkan music would be something really interesting, you know, because I felt like both places were mine, home. You know?
Yeah, and I think I can see that with the way that his career moved, and he, as a band leader and as a composer, and yeah, that's wonderful to hear. But it's a shame that you never met him, because I think he would have dug what you play. I think, you know, you both have this unique approach to the double bass, and you've strayed away from a more traditional path, and I think that's one of the wonderful things about Charlie Hayden as well. But it's still rooted in a great respect for the tradition, and
totally,
you know,
totally.
and for your heritage. And I love the way that you put those things together, Nenad. Just before we finish off, I had a few things I wanted to ask you about equipment, because you've travelled over to be with us today, and you're sounding absolutely incredible on my instrument.
Well, it's an incredible instrument, so it's
I
easy
do
to
like
to sound good on it, you know.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's you really have a wonderful way of kind of just getting, you know, you got very familiar very quickly with the bass. Do you travel with your own instrument much? How do you find using the bass de jure?
Well, to be honest with you, I almost never travel with my bass for the last 15 years, from '99 when that stopped, kind of thing, you know, flying with the bass became a heavy thing to do. So I'm trying to put it in a technical rider as best as possible, because it's really important for me, couple of things. It's important that we have a D neck, which is really important thing. It's important for me to be 104, 105 centimeters, you know, long, the string length, you know, here. So I pretty much feel familiar then with my bass. Other thing is, like, I play realist since the day one. I remember Wayne Darling coming from New York, bringing a new pickup, said, "Hey, there is a new pickup in New York, you want to check it out?" And that was like 5 years before everybody used the realist in Europe, you know. And I got it from him, you know.
And you still use the realist now?
Oh yeah, I'm totally realist guy.
Wow,
you know?
that's so cool.
I'm on realist on all my basses, you know.
So you're a realist guy. In terms of strings, I believe you're a Tomastic artist, which is a
I
wonderful
work.
thing.
I'm very happy that I'm a Tomastic member for the last 7 years, or maybe 10 years even. I don't know. So.
And we have Spyrical Vikes for you today.
Right, that's something I played pretty often. Belcantos also.
Yeah.
So it's really pleasure and honor to be part of the Tomastic family, to be endorser for this company, especially because they're coming from Vienna, where I live. I'm like a couple of blocks away from the factory. So being there, checking new strings, beta strings, you know, everything new that's coming, and they're really great guys over there, you know. So it's.
And what about your personal instrument? What's the bass that you spent? I know that you own several basses, so maybe just give us what's the key instrument if you could save one from the practice room?
Yeah, well,
Which one would it be?
my first bass is nothing fancy, you know. It's just I think a Hungarian or Romanian bass that I have for like 15 years. It's 340 104. It's I think the copy of Magini. So it's a violin bass. It's not gamba. Sounds pretty nice. Actually, pretty similar to this bass. Maybe a little bit deeper and more sustained in a good way. Maybe not. I don't know. It's hard to say. But it's just the bass that cuts through the band. I don't like playing basses. So trying new basses without the band is like actually wasting of time for me. I always need to hear if I'm cutting through.
I always think basses on their own always sound great because the double bass is a wonderful instrument, but then it's when it's in context, and this is definitely the case when you're thinking about equipment. And in terms of playing with the band, you have the Realist, the Tomastic strings. What are you using in terms of an amplifier?
I'm using the Gallien-Kruger Forever.
Yeah, the MB150.
Right, yeah, that's my go-to amp. You know, I have several. I have one set on the road when I'm traveling, so I have the older one, and I have a couple of new ones also in Berlin where I teach. I also have one, so I think that's a really, for me, go-to amp always. I always manage to get good sound, both acoustic and electric. Yeah. Also.
And your recorded work sounds incredible, and I happen to know that you are deeply involved in audio recording and have a wonderful studio.
That's my love, yeah.
So you love the recording. Have you got any thoughts about, to finish off with, about recording bass? What are your favorite microphones that you like to use? Any thoughts on microphone placement maybe to help us?
Yeah, well, it's pretty simple. Mic placement, I learned that from Dave Holland because I was looking at a sound check once. We were playing on the same festival, so I was lucky enough to be there when he was sound checking, and the guy asked him like, where do you want to have your mic? And he said like, well, in front of the bridge. And that's a starting point always for me. So it's a front of the bridge or my left hole, F hole.
So we're talking kind of here or here, rather than going for the bass side.
Right, this side never works good for me. So I use this side or the central side. And I don't go too high because I get too much noise from the fingerboard. I like to have a body mixed with a fingerboard sound. If the bass is good and the sound you're doing is okay, then you're not gonna need the mics very high, you know. You're gonna get all the harmonics and everything in downstairs. Should be there, that's what you should be projecting. But there is one thing that I'm really picky about it. Like, okay, having great equipment is one thing, but I like using small diaphragm mic on...
Small diaphragm mic?
Small condensers, like Neumann KM184 or Schoeps C4, I think, or maybe Sennheiser 8020, 8040. All these small diaphragm mics, I think they're handling the bass thing much better, this proximity effect that a big membrane has.
I think Larry Grenadier uses a Schoeps CM6, maybe,
I know,
for live work.
I did a lot of research, so I'm telling you, a lot of great guys are using small
Renaud
condensers.
Garcia Fons, I think he uses a combination, but he certainly has...
John is pretty sure about Schoeps. I think John Patitucci confirmed that for me, using Schoeps in studios, probably using everything, you know, but liking Schoeps. Small Schoeps mics and small Neumann mics, small condenser Neumann mics are always my go-to mics.
Do you like ribbon mics?
They sound interesting, yeah. For solo bass, you can use whatever you want, but when you want to use something that cuts with the band and sounds solo great and everything, then I will go for small condensers.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful advice. Well, listen, I think, Nenad, it feels like a good time to wrap up. Just before Please, can you let us know a bit about where people can find you and what you have coming up, any projects you want to share?
Yeah.
What's next for you?
Well, my thing that I'm doing, I'm a band leader for more than 20 years now. So I started in '99 with the first record, so we are 24 now. So it's 25 years doing band leader things. So I have my two go-to bands. The one is with accordion and saxophone. We are touring for like 12 years. It's a working band, you know. So that's something that's happening all the time. So we're now playing in Vienna, then we're in Austria, in Graz, then we have the whole tour in Serbia, then we're playing in Berlin, in Germany, and so on through the whole Europe with this band. But I'm also having a piano trio band with different piano players, some great ones, some young ones, which are really great. And I'm trying to do more of that classical jazz thing with what I'm writing right now, with the bass and drums and piano, and maybe a little bit of Fender Rhodes. You know,
Oh wow!
because
I like the sound of Fender Rhodes. It's
yeah,
just gorgeous,
I'm
isn't it?
totally into it, and it blends great with the double bass too. So I love that combination. But also I have an ongoing project with a big band. With my music arranged by a couple of different arrangers, and it sounds beautiful. We just did a concert in Croatia with a Croatian TV big band, radio big band. We did it year before in Belgrade, and I'm trying to make it work in Germany also, and you know, everywhere else where we have the big bands, because it's a dying thing, something that's disappearing slowly, unfortunately.
Wonderful. And just to wrap things up, any last final pieces of or thoughts or advice for young students who are kind of still finding their way, they're putting this all together, maybe they feel a little bit overwhelmed by the amount that we've covered. We've covered a lifetime of music, really, so far.
Well, you know, being humble, trying also when you like successful in your life, you know, to stay humble, but also when you don't have so beautiful times of your life, not to go too much down. Keep it in the middle, you know?
Yeah.
Keep it in the middle. That's like really important for our job, because you have like 6 months of touring and everything is beautiful, recording, you're like every newspaper about you, you know, and then for 4 months, not a gig, not a single thing coming. So try not to go too much in the air when it's a good times, and try not to go too much down, you know, when you have heavy times. That's probably one of the things. And the next thing, like practice, practice, practice.
Oh, I love that. Well, listen, let's finish there. Nenad, thank you so much for joining me on behalf of everybody here. We're going to hear you do a short solo performance. And if people want to learn more about this great artist, please check out all the links below over at discoverdoublebase.com. We will be featuring everything that we've spoken about in this video, so you can find your way to his music. And yeah, thank you, sir. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers. Thank you, Nenad.